Nature doesn't draw straight lines. That's what geologist Yves Fouquet thought when he stared at a newly generated undersea map of the Atlantic seabed.
In 2004, a marine archaeology team descended 400 meters into the Persian Gulf and found 7 black basalt cylinders arranged in a perfect hexagon on the ocean floor. Tool marks, hollow interiors, made from a basalt variety that does not occur within 800 kilometers of the site. A 5,000-year-old Sumerian tablet had described the structures, their dimensions, and their location with cubit-level precision. The Turkish government shut the expedition down in 3 weeks. The coordinates were classified. If the tablet was right about what was down there, human civilization was not built, it was installed. The structures that should not exist. The story does not begin in 2004. It begins in 1968 with a Soviet submarine running deep in the Persian Gulf, logging a sonar return that had no business being there. The readings showed a massive geometric formation on the seafloor at a depth of 400 meters. Right angles, symmetry, dimensions that did not match anything natural. The Soviet Navy classified the coordinates within 24 hours. The discovery vanished into a vault. The submarine's logbook was sealed. The crew was reassigned. The site was flagged on Soviet naval charts as a navigational hazard with no further explanation. It stayed buried for 33 years. In 2001, a former Soviet naval officer who had served on a Cold War-era oceanographic research program published the leaked coordinates in a small Russian-language journal aimed at military historians. The article ran 4 pages. Almost nobody read it. A Turkish marine archaeologist named Dr. Mehmet Odawan did. He had spent his career investigating Mesopotamian flood-era sites along the Gulf Coast, and the coordinates landed inside a region he had been mapping for years. He spent 2 years assembling a joint Turkish-American team and securing permits. In the spring of 2004, his expedition reached the site. What they pulled up on sonar matched the Soviet readings exactly. 7 cylindrical structures, each one approximately 30 meters in diameter, each one extending 90 meters down into the seabed. 6 of them arranged in a perfect hexagonal pattern, the 7th sitting in the geometric center. The hexagonal spacing was uniform to within centimeters. Sonar showed the cylinders were hollow, internal chambers, connecting passages. The structure was not a ruin, it was an installation. The team sent down ROVs. The footage is what triggered the shutdown. The cylinders were carved from black basalt, and the surfaces showed unmistakable tool marks, clean cuts, sharp angles, drilled mounting points along the upper rims. The kind of finish that does not occur from natural erosion under any conditions. Granite columns weather into rounded forms over millennia. These edges were still sharp. The ROV cameras caught what looked like seam lines between sections, suggesting the cylinders had been assembled rather than carved from single blocks. One of the ROVs picked up something else on the central cylinder, a circular indentation roughly 2 meters across, set into the side of the structure at what would have been the original waterline before sea levels rose. The team flagged it as a possible hatch. They never got to investigate it. Then came the basalt analysis. The cylinders were made from a specific volcanic basalt with a distinct mineral signature. The nearest natural source of that exact basalt variety sits 800 kilometers away in the mountains of Armenia. Whoever built the structures did not quarry locally. They transported tens of thousands of tons of stone across mountains and rivers, then somehow assembled it on the seafloor. The logistics are the part nobody wants to talk about. 5,000 years ago, no civilization on Earth had the documented capacity to move that volume of stone over that distance, much less to set it on a seafloor at 400 meters of depth. The largest stones moved in the ancient world, the megaliths at Baalbek and the casing stones at Giza, weigh a fraction of what each cylinder section would weigh, and those were moved on dry land. Whoever built the Abzu did the same job underwater, in the dark, at pressures that would crush a modern unprotected diver. 3 weeks into the expedition, the Turkish government revoked the permits. Soldiers boarded the survey vessel before it returned to port. Sample crates were confiscated, logbooks were seized, hard drives were imaged and held. The site was declared a military exclusion zone and remains one to this day. No civilian. Vessel has been permitted within 5 kilometers of the coordinates since 2004. The official justification cited unspecified national security concerns. No further explanation has ever been provided. Freedom of information requests filed by journalists in 3 countries have been denied. Dr. Odawan gave one interview to a regional Turkish newspaper before he stopped speaking publicly. The interview ran in the back pages and was never reprinted. He said the team had reached one of the internal chambers before the shutdown. He said what they found inside it was the reason the government pulled them out. He refused to describe what it was. He said one more thing before he ended the interview. The Sumerian records, he said, are not mythology. They are history. Then he went silent. He has not spoken on the record since. He retired from his university post in 2007 and has declined every interview request filed since. His co-investigators on the American side of the team signed non-disclosure agreements as a condition of receiving back their confiscated equipment. None of them have published a single paper on the expedition in the 2 decades since. The site sits exactly where the Tigris and Euphrates emptied into the Persian Gulf 5,000 years ago, when sea levels were lower and the coastline ran tens of kilometers further out. The cylinders sit exactly where the rivers would have met the ancient sea. That detail does not come from modern surveying, it comes from the tablet. If forbidden archaeology is the kind of thing that pulls you into this channel, the suppressed digs, the classified coordinates, the discoveries governments bury within 3 weeks, hit subscribe before the next part. What MIT detected at those exact coordinates is where this stops being history. The tablet that predicted it. The tablet is cataloged as VAT12772, archived in a museum collection in Istanbul. It belongs to a body of texts scholars call the Eridu Genesis collection. Eridu was the first Sumerian city, not the oldest city we currently know about, the first city, period. According to the Sumerians, before Eridu, humanity lived in scattered hunter-gatherer groups with no writing, no agriculture, no organized civilization. Then the Anunnaki arrived from the sky. Within a single generation, every foundational system of human society appeared. Writing, mathematics, law, astronomy, metallurgy, industrial-scale agriculture, cities laid out on geometric grids, standardized weights and measures, astronomical records accurate to within minutes of arc. VAT12772 is not a religious text. It is a construction document. It reads like a maintenance log. It lists structural features, records dimensions, and catalogs functions level by level. The tablet describes the Abzu, a structure built by the Anunnaki on the seafloor near where 2 rivers meet the sea. The tone is procedural. There are no invocations. There are no prayers. There is no narrative arc. It is a technical specification. The match between the tablet and the cylinders is what makes this impossible to wave away. The tablet specifies 7 primary structures. The expedition found 7. The tablet specifies a hexagonal arrangement around a central chamber. The expedition found exactly that geometry. The tablet gives dimensions in Sumerian cubits. Converted to meters, those dimensions match the cylinders to within centimeters. The tablet describes the construction material as a black volcanic stone brought from the eastern mountains. The cylinders are black basalt sourced from the mountains of Armenia, due east of the site. The tablet places the entrance where 2 rivers meet the sea. The expedition found the cylinders at the exact paleo coordinates of the Tigris-Euphrates ancient delta, a coincidence list. This long stops being coincidence somewhere around the 3rd item. By the 7th, it is documentation. The interior is described in equally specific detail. A vertical shaft descends through rock into a chamber, arranged across 7 internal levels. Each level performs a function. The first level handles water processing. The second handles purification of air. The third stores knowledge. The fourth manages biological processes. The 5th, 6th, and 7th levels are damaged on the tablet, and the surviving fragments mention geometric patterns carved into the walls, glowing stones that produce light without flame, and a central chamber where the Anunnaki interfaced with what the Sumerians called the Me, the fundamental operating principles of civilization itself. The Anunnaki did not arrive empty-handed. The tablet describes a vehicle they used to descend into the Abzu. The Sumerians called it a skyboat, cylindrical, enclosed, built from a metal that did not corrode, capable of moving through both air and water without sails or oars. The Sumerians watched these craft drop from the sky, plunge into the sea, and disappear beneath the surface. They wrote it down with the flat, procedural tone of a port logbook, recording the arrival of cargo. There is no awe in the description. There is no fear. There is only the steady accumulation of detail, as if the scribe had seen the craft so many times, he was simply cataloging another arrival. Inside the chambers, the Anunnaki taught small groups of humans the sacred me, not as slaves, as students, writing, mathematics, astronomy, agriculture, metallurgy, medicine, the full operating manual of civilization. The humans who emerged from the Abzu became the first priest-kings of Sumer. The tablet lists them by name. The same names appear on the Sumerian king list, which records the earliest kings as ruling for thousands of years apiece. The standard interpretation calls those numbers mythological exaggeration. The numbers stop being exaggerated if the early entries are not human. If the king list is recording the reigns of the Anunnaki themselves before governance was handed over to humans, the lifespans line up. The tablet describes the Anunnaki themselves, taller than humans, stronger. Facial features the Sumerians called both beautiful and unsettling. And one anatomical detail that gets glossed over in most translations. Their eyes reflected light the way the eyes of certain animals do. That is a precise observation. It describes a tapetum lucidum, the structure that produces eyeshine in nocturnal animals. It is exactly what you find in beings adapted to low light, or beings engineered for environments lit by a different spectrum than Earth's sun. A primitive culture inventing gods from imagination does not invent that detail. It is too specific. It is too anatomically accurate. The Sumerians wrote it down because they saw it. In 2012, a Turkish engineer named Gökhan Sedar took the dimensions and functional descriptions from VAT 12772 and built a three-dimensional model of what the Abzu's interior would look like. He published it in an engineering journal. The model showed a structure more sophisticated than anything humans built before the 20th century. Multiple pressure locks, redundant air filtration, modular chambers that could be sealed off independently, a central shaft with spiral access, a power system the tablet describes as drawing energy from the Earth itself. Mainstream archaeology dismissed Sedar's reconstruction as speculation. 3 years later, MIT proved it was not. The active signature. In 2015, an MIT marine geology team ran a survey of undersea volcanic vents in the Persian Gulf. They were looking for chemosynthetic life around hydrothermal vents. They found something else, a low-frequency electromagnetic field, emanating from the same coordinates as Dr. Odawan's structures, pulsing at a regular interval, every 18.7 seconds. The signal was not natural. Geological processes do not produce repeating waveforms with that level of timing precision. The pattern was clean, periodic, and consistent across the entire survey window. The team logged it for 11 days before they had to return to port. The signal did not vary in frequency, it did not drift, it pulsed with the regularity of an engineered clock. MIT published the readings. The official paper attributed the signal to unknown geological processes. That phrase did a lot of work. 2 members of the survey team did not accept the attribution. They left their MIT positions within 6 months of publication and went to work for private marine archaeology firms. Neither has spoken on the record about what they saw. One of them told a journalist off the record that what they detected was not natural and that it scared them. He used the word terrified. Then he asked for the recorder to be turned off. The structure has been pulsing every 18.7 seconds for as long as the equipment has been listening. There is no power source on the seafloor that should be capable of producing it. There is no decaying isotope or geothermal vent that produces clean periodic signals. The signal is being generated by something right now. The tablet describes the seals that keep the Abzu intact, 7 of them, made from what the Sumerians called heaven's metal, a substance that did not rust, did not degrade, and could not be broken by any tool the Sumerians possessed. Modern metallurgists who have read the description point out that it matches alloys we developed in the late 20th century, titanium-aluminum compounds, ceramic matrix composites, materials with no precedent in any ancient human civilization. Materials that would in fact be ideal for long-duration deep-sea construction under crushing pressure and saline corrosion. Each seal had a function. The first guarded against water pressure, the second against seismic vibrations, the third against biological contamination. The remaining 4 are described in language the Sumerians did not have the vocabulary for. They write about protection against the unseen fire and against the sky poison. Modern readers see what the Sumerians could not name: radiation shielding, atmospheric filtration, biological agents the structure was designed to keep out, threats ancient humans had no words for because they had never encountered them. The Sumerian scribes wrote down what they were told and let later civilizations work out the meaning. The interior lighting is described the same way: stones that captured the essence of the sun, stones that glowed without producing heat, without consuming fuel, without dimming. For centuries, scholars dismissed the description as poetry. In 1998, researchers documented crystalline structures that store and release light through phosphorescence. In 2003, scientists demonstrated materials that generate luminescence through piezoelectric effects, converting mechanical pressure into light. The Persian Gulf is seismically active. Constant micro-vibrations from the seafloor would supply more than enough mechanical input to power a piezoelectric lighting system indefinitely. The system would be self-sustaining for as long as the Earth keeps shifting. There is one passage on the tablet that describes windows in the Abzu's walls, not windows looking up to the surface, windows looking out into the deep. The Anunnaki built transparent sections in the walls so they could observe the surrounding ocean. The tablet says the windows were made from crystallized water that never melted, ice that stayed clear despite the pressure and darkness of the sea floor. Modern engineers did not develop transparent aluminum, a ceramic as clear as glass and stronger than steel, until 2006. If the builders of the Abzu used something similar, it would survive at depth for millennia without clouding or cracking. They would still be looking out. The Abzu is not a ruin. It is a sealed, pressurized, illuminated, electromagnetically active installation that has been running for 12,000 years. The MIT data is the proof. The signal does not stop. The watchers who stayed. The tablet records what happened next. The Anunnaki left Earth, not all of them. A faction departed. The rest stayed. The departure is described in unusual detail. The Anunnaki gathered at the entrance to the Abzu during what the Sumerians called the time of great darkness, which scholars read as a solar eclipse. 7 skyboats rose from the water in formation. They were cylindrical, built from the same heaven's metal as the seals, with surfaces that reflected light like polished silver. They made no sound except for a deep hum the Sumerians felt in their chests rather than heard with their ears. The craft hovered, then shot upward and disappeared into what the tablet calls the black ocean above the sky. Human witnesses were present, the tablet names them, priests and scribes who recorded every detail of what they saw. The names match the priest-king lineage recorded on the Sumerian king list. They were not making it up. They were watching their teachers leave. The same departure shows up in cultures that should not have known about it. The Vedic texts of India describe vimanas, flying craft with the same characteristics: cylindrical hulls, silent operation except for a hum, vertical ascent. The Egyptian Book of the Dead describes gods departing in vessels that traveled through both water and sky. The Mayan Popol Vuh describes sky serpents carrying the creators back to their place of origin. None of these cultures had contact with Sumer when these texts were composed. They recorded the same event in the same vocabulary. The Andean traditions of South America describe the same thing again: beings from the sky who taught civilization, then ascended in shining vessels and promised to return. The Anunnaki who remained are called the Watchers. The tablet says they stayed to observe humanity's development and ensure the long-term plan stayed on course. They did not live in cities. They did not interact openly with humans. They operated from hidden locations: underground facilities, mountain strongholds, coastal caves. One group of watchers, according to the tablet, remained inside the Abzu itself, sealed in, with instructions to maintain the structure until the return. The Book of Enoch records the same story from a different cultural angle. Enoch describes watchers who came to Earth and taught humans forbidden knowledge. The Sumerian tablet calls it timed release information. Information humanity was not ready for yet, but would need later. The Watchers were supposed to guard it and release it only when humanity reached specific developmental thresholds. According to Enoch, some Watchers broke protocol and released the knowledge early. That violation triggered the chain of events that led to the flood. 2 separate ancient traditions, written in different languages, by cultures separated by 2,000 kilometers and 1,000 years, describing the same group of beings doing the same thing for the same stated reasons. The overlap is not narrative borrowing. It is shared documentation of a shared event. The tablet describes the flood as deliberate, not divine punishment, environmental management. The Anunnaki who left determined that humanity had developed too fast along the wrong vectors: war, violence, misuse of the knowledge they had been given. They triggered a reset. The tablet says they opened the fountains of the deep and broke the dams of heaven. Geological records confirm massive glacial melts at the end of the last ice age. Sea levels rose more than 100 meters in a geologically rapid window. Coastal civilizations were erased. Whatever evidence existed of pre-flood human society was buried under hundreds of meters of seawater. The Abzu survived. It was designed to. The seals held. The chambers stayed sealed. The watchers inside continued their vigil. The tablet describes them entering a state of suspended animation, not death. A deep sleep that could last thousands of years. A biological process that allowed them to survive on minimal resources until conditions were right to wake. The tablet describes the chambers used for this purpose: sealed individual cells, temperature controlled, atmosphere regulated. Each cell linked to the central chamber by what the Sumerians called the cord of waking, a control system tied to whatever conditions the watchers were programmed to respond to. The signal pulses every 18.7 seconds. Something is maintaining it. The plan is still unfolding. The tablet calls the Anunnaki's long-term project the Great Plan. Earth was a long-term operation. They could not stay permanently. The atmospheric pressure was wrong. The air composition was hostile. The radiation environment was outside their tolerances. They needed something that could maintain the planet in their absence. So they engineered a species that would do the work for them. A species that would build cities, develop technology, maintain the knowledge they had been given, and prepare for the return. The tablet describes this engineering in clinical terms. The Anunnaki took an existing primate stock and modified it. They added what the tablet calls the spark of the gods. Modern readers see what that phrase points at: targeted genetic intervention. The final lines of VAT-12772 contain a single sentence that has unsettled every translator who has worked on it. The plan is still unfolding. In 2018, a genetics company published a study on ancient human DNA. The researchers identified genetic markers in modern Middle Eastern populations that do not match any known human migration pattern, markers that appear suddenly in the archaeological record around 5000 BCE. Exactly when Sumerian civilization explodes into existence. The study itself made no claim about the origin. It simply logged the markers as anomalous. They appear without precursor and propagate forward into the modern population. They are still here. They are in people walking around right now. The geographic concentration is highest in the regions corresponding to ancient Sumer, with a clean gradient outward following the migration patterns of the post-flood era. The markers track the Sumerian diaspora exactly. The seed of return, according to the tablet, is biological. The Anunnaki embedded markers that would activate under specific conditions. The tablet does not specify which conditions. It does not say what the activation does. It says only that when the seed wakes, those who carry it will know. They will be drawn back to the Abzu. They will be the ones to break the seals. The tablet is explicit on one point. The breaking is not done from the outside. The seals open from within. If the seed of return is genetic, the key is already distributed across millions of living people. They do not know they carry it. They have no way to know. The activation has not occurred yet. The tablet says it will. It says only that the activation is fixed. It is coming. It cannot be stopped. The Sumerians did not write myths. They wrote records. They described what they saw with the precision of scribes who knew the people walking past their tablets in 3000 BCE would need the information to be accurate. What they saw were beings from the sky who built structures beneath the ocean, taught humans the foundations of civilization, and left with a promise to return. They did not romanticize it. They did not fictionalize it. They recorded it the way a port clerk records the arrival and departure of merchant vessels. VAT-12772 ends with a warning. The seals will break when the time is right. When humanity is ready. The tablet does not specify what readiness means. It does not say who decides. It says only that the moment of unsealing is fixed. The mechanism is already in place. The conditions are already specified. Somewhere in the structure, a counter is running. When it reaches its threshold, the seals open from the inside. Right now, at 400 meters below the surface of the Persian Gulf, something is pulsing every 18.7 seconds. It has been doing that for at least 12,000 years. Nothing built by human hands runs that long. The cylinders are sealed. The chambers are intact. The signal does not stop. Whatever is down there is not sleeping. Drop a comment with one word. Wake, if the seals are meant to break in our lifetime. Sleep, if humanity is not ready. Subscribe so the next one lands in your feed. A declassified CIA remote viewing file that allegedly mapped the same 7 cylinders in the same hexagonal pattern before the Turkish team ever found them. The video on screen is where this goes next.